My name's Marcus. I'm 35. For as long as I can remember, I've been the one in the background, not the golden child, not the one with the spotlight, just the one who was always there. My younger brother Adam was the star, the chosen one, star athlete, straight-A student, mom and dad's little trophy, and me. I was the one who fixed his car when he crashed it. The one who covered his parking tickets so our parents wouldn't take away his keys. The one who made excuses when he skipped holidays just to keep the peace. They'd call it being a good older brother. I called it being a ghost with a bank account. It was easier when I lived out of state. I moved to Seattle right after college, took a job in IT, and built a decent life for myself. I had a small apartment, a steady paycheck, and a quiet routine. But every time I visited home, usually for birthdays, weddings, or when my mom missed me, I became the +1 to my own family. Conversations always circled around Adam, his promotions, his new girlfriend Emma, the one with the perfect Instagram life, the marathon he ran last fall. Even when I tried to share news like my recent promotion to lead analyst, it barely earned a nod. My mum would smile polite but distracted, already shifting the topic to Adam's upcoming business trip to Tokyo. My dad would grunt something about tech jobs not being real work before turning back to his sports channel. Still, I kept showing up, not because I believed it would change, but because some part of me hoped they'd finally see me. Appreciate me, at least acknowledge that I was trying. I brought gifts every Christmas, helped cover part of their mortgage when COVID hit and things got tight, transferred Adam $500 here, $300 there, always just until Friday, and always with a copy-paste thank you text in return. My parents never asked where the money came from. They just assumed I was doing fine. "You don't have a family of your own," my mom once said. "You can afford to help your brother." Then came my dad's 65th birthday. It was a backyard barbecue, nothing fancy, just family neighbours and cheap paper plates stacked with burgers. I flew in for the weekend, spent half a Friday night helping my mum hang decorations, even paid for the cake, when she realised the one she ordered was too small. Saturday rolled around and by noon the house was packed. Adam arrived fashionably late as always, strolling in with a new watch, and Emma on his arm, her high heels clacking against the pavement as she waved like a celebrity. My dad's eyes lit up when he saw him the way they hadn't for me in years. He hugged Adam, his voice booming with a laugh I hadn't heard in months. Then he looked at me, nodded once, and turned back to Adam like I was the guy who brought the napkins. Dinner came, drinks flowed, people gathered around the fire pit trading stories and teasing each other in that shallow surface-level way families do when decades of unresolved tension hide just beneath the jokes. That's when it happened. Someone, maybe my cousin Jake, who had a few too many beers, turned to me and asked, "So Marcus, what have you been up to?" I told them about a new security system I'd helped design for a logistics firm, one that was saving them tens of thousands of dollars a month in reduced theft and downtime. The conversation barely lasted a minute before Adam jumped in, talking about a deal he'd closed last week. My dad clapped him on the back, grinning. "Now that's how you make a real difference," he said, beaming. I forced a laugh, not out of joy, but out of that hollow, bitter disbelief that settles in when you realise you'll never measure up. "Guess all I'm good for is paying the bills, huh?" I joked. My dad turned drink in hand and said it loud enough for the whole patio to hear. "You've always been a drain, Marcus. Your brother's the one who actually matters." The world didn't stop spinning. Nobody dropped their drinks or gasped in horror. A few people laughed awkwardly. My mum tried to shush him, but it was too late. My stomach dropped, not because I was surprised, but because for once he said it out loud. I didn't make a scene. I didn't yell or storm off like in the movies. I just stood there for a second, nodding. Slowly, then walked inside, grabbed my suitcase, booked an early flight back to Seattle and left. No note, no goodbyes, just silence. The flight back to Seattle felt both too short and painfully long. I leaned my head against the cold window, watching the scattered lights of the city below my mind, replaying my father's words over and over. You've always been a drain, Marcus. Your brother's the one who actually matters. When I got back to my apartment, I dropped my suitcase by the door and just stood there in the dark. I should have felt something. Anger, betrayal, maybe even heartbreak. But instead I just felt tired. Not the kind of tired you fix with a good night's sleep, but the kind that settles deep in your bones, the kind that comes from carrying too much for too long. I went back to work the next day, poured myself into spreadsheets, security protocols, and project plans. It felt good to focus on something that didn't talk back, didn't judge, and definitely didn't make me feel like an afterthought. But something had shifted. I stopped replying to my family's group texts. I let calls go to voicemail. I even skipped the monthly auto transfer I'd been sending to Adam. The quiet $500 that helped cover his rent until his big break finally came. A week went by then too. Then one Thursday night as I was making dinner, my phone buzzed. I glanced down to see Adam's name. "Hey man, you forgot to send the usual this month. Everything okay?" I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then I typed back. Didn't want to waste it on someone who already has everything that matters. I hit send and dropped the phone onto the counter, my heart pounding. I half expected an immediate reply, a follow-up call, maybe even an angry voicemail, but all I got was silence. Then 3 days later, my mum called. I let it ring. She called again. I ignored it. A text followed. "Mom, are you okay? We haven't heard from you. Adam says you're acting strange." I didn't reply. The messages kept coming, shifting from worried to guilt-trippy, then to outright angry. "Mom, we're family. Adam needs you right now. You're being selfish." "Mom, after all we've done for you, this is how you repay us." It was like a script, each line another twist of the knife. I let them pile up unread like junk mail. For the first time, I didn't feel obligated to respond. Then came the fallout. It started small. My Aunt Linda, the one who always sat quietly at family gatherings, too polite to pick sides, left me a voicemail. "Marcus, your mum is worried. She says Adam's behind on rent and your parents are dipping into their savings to help him. What's going on?" I stared at the wall, the quiet of my apartment pressing in around me. I knew this would happen. I'd been holding up their world for so long that they'd forgotten it wasn't their own strength keeping it steady. "Linda, call them please, just talk to them. They're your family." I didn't call back. 2 weeks later, my cousin Jake messaged me out of the blue. He never reached out, not even on birthdays. "Jake, hey, heard from your mom. Things sound rough over there. Everything okay?" I didn't reply. Then came the messages from old family friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly trying to reach me through LinkedIn, Facebook, even my work email. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash, each message another piece of debris flying past. Then my mom tried a new tactic. She sent an email subject line, "Come home." It was short, just a few lines, but every word felt like it had been pulled from a manual titled "How to Manipulate Without Saying You're Sorry." "Mom, your father isn't well. Adam's trying his best, but he needs support. We're still your family. Please come home." I read it twice, then a third time, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and anger. Did they even hear themselves? Did they not see the years I spent supporting them, the sacrifices I made, the countless times I put their needs above my own? I closed the laptop without replying. Then 2 days later, I got a call from Emma Adams' girlfriend, the first time she'd ever bothered to contact me directly. Her voice was tight, her words clipped. "Emma Adams really struggling, Marcus. He needs you. This isn't fair." I let her talk, the words washing over me like static until she finally ran out of things to say. "I'm sorry," I replied, my voice steady, "but I'm not his safety net anymore." There was a long pause, then the line went dead. I set the phone down, leaning back against my kitchen counter, and felt something I hadn't felt in years, the quiet, powerful relief of setting a boundary. They had always seen me as the one who fixed their messes, the one who absorbed the blows, the one who made things right. But not anymore. And as the days turned into weeks, the silence from my family grew louder. I went to work. I took long walks by the waterfront. I started cooking real meals instead of microwaving leftovers. And slowly, piece by piece, I began to reclaim my life. The first real crack in their facade came 2 months later. I was sitting on my balcony, the crisp Seattle air cutting through the remnants of summer, when my phone buzzed. It was my Aunt Linda, the quiet peacemaker of the family. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, it buzzed again. Then again. I sighed, grabbed my phone and hit play. "Marcus, it's Aunt Linda. Listen, I'm not trying to meddle, but your mom is in tears. She says Adam's behind on rent and your parents are dipping into their savings to help. They don't understand why you're being so distant. Just call her, okay? Family is family." I leaned back in my chair, the metallic chill of the armrest pressing against my skin. Family is family. I'd heard that line so many times it had lost all meaning. For years I had been the quiet support, the invisible scaffolding holding up their lives. I paid bills without being asked, covered debts no one acknowledged, and made sacrifices they conveniently ignored. And now, the one time I chose myself, I was the villain. I took a deep breath, the salty breeze filling my lungs, and hit call. She picked up on the second ring. "Marcus." Her voice was shaky, like she'd been crying. "Yeah, it's me." "Oh, thank God. I've been so worried. Why haven't you called? Adam is struggling and your father—" "Well, things have been hard." I could hear the guilt dripping from her words, a carefully crafted mix of concern and manipulation. "I'm fine, Mom," I replied, my voice steady. "Just been busy." "Busy?" She scoffed, the familiar edge of frustration creeping in. "Too busy to check on your family. Your brother is drowning Marcus. He's behind on rent, his credit cards are maxed out, and we've had to step in to help. You know we can't afford that. Your father's medical bills alone?" I felt a flicker of anger, the old familiar heat rising in my chest. "Why is that my problem, Mum?" Silence. For the first time in years I had rendered her speechless. What she finally whispered. "Why is it my responsibility to keep bailing him out? I've been doing it for years, and all it's done is teach him that he doesn't have to stand on his own 2 feet. That's not fair, Marcus. He's your brother. Family supports each other." I let out a bitter laugh. "Really?" "Because it seems like the only support in this family flows in one direction. I've covered his rent, paid off his debts, even sent you and Dad money when things got tight. Did you ever once ask where that money came from?" She was quiet again, the silence stretching out like a chasm between us. "We just assumed you were doing fine," she murmured, her voice small. "Yeah, that's the problem. You assumed. You always assumed I'd be there to pick up the pieces, to keep the lights on, to make sure everything kept running smoothly. But I'm done being your safety net. Marcus, please don't do this. We're family." There it was again, that word, the one they wielded like a weapon whenever I tried to set a boundary. "Family isn't just about blood, Mom," I said, my voice firm. "It's about respect, and I'm tired of being the only one expected to sacrifice." I hung up before she could respond, my hand shaking slightly as I set the phone down. I closed my eyes, the cool breeze washing over my face, and felt something like relief. Over the next few weeks, the cracks in their carefully constructed world started to widen. My parents' house, the one I had quietly helped them save from foreclosure a few years back, slipped into pre-foreclosure again. Without my monthly contributions, the bills started piling up, the financial stress creeping in like an unwelcome guest. Adam's landlord started calling my parents, demanding late rent. His girlfriend Emma posted a tearful breakup video titled "Moving on My Truth" that racked up more views than any of her previous content combined. Then one evening I got a call from Jake, the cousin who always seemed to float on the edges of family drama, never quite getting involved. "Hey man," he said, his voice hesitant. "I know we haven't talked much lately, but your mum reached out to me. She's really worried about you. She says the family is falling apart." I leaned back in my chair, staring out at the city lights. "Falling apart, huh?" I said, more to myself than to him. "Yeah," he continued, his voice growing bolder. Apparently, Adam's in deep, your dad's health is shaky, and they're struggling to keep up with the bills. She says you've cut them off, that you've abandoned them. I felt a strange, cold clarity settle over me. Jake, I said, my voice steady, I haven't abandoned anyone. I've just stopped being their unpaid fixer. He was quiet for a moment, the line crackling with the weight of unspoken truths. I get it, man, he finally said. I do. Just take care of yourself, okay? I hung up without another word, my heart pounding. For the first time in years, I felt like I was no longer the one holding everything together, the one silently absorbing the blows. I was free. 2 more months passed. The silence from my family had become a kind of white noise, a background hum that I had grown strangely comfortable with. The guilt I once felt for stepping back had faded, replaced by a quiet, steady resolve. Then one rainy Tuesday I got a letter. Not an email, not a text, an actual physical letter. It arrived at my apartment in a crisp white envelope, my name written in my mother's neat slanted cursive. I hadn't seen her handwriting in years. I sat at my kitchen table, the dim light from the overcast sky casting long shadows across the counter. I took a deep breath and opened it. Marcus, I know you probably won't read this, or if you do, you'll think it's just another attempt to guilt you. Maybe it is, but I need you to understand something. Your father's health is getting worse. He won't tell anyone, but the doctors say his heart is weak. He's scared, Marcus. That's why he's been lashing out. That's why he said what he said at the barbecue. Adam is struggling too. He's not as strong as you think. He's drowning in debt, and without your support, he's barely keeping his head above water. You've always been the one we could count on. Not because we didn't love you, but because you've always been the strong one, the reliable one. Maybe that wasn't fair. Maybe we leaned on you too much. But families make mistakes, Marcus. Right now, we're falling apart. We need you. Please come home. I sat there, the letter trembling in my hands, my chest tightening with a mixture of anger and something that felt almost like pity. I should have felt something. Guilt, maybe, or even the old familiar pull to rush in and fix everything. But instead, I just felt tired. For the first time, I didn't feel like their safety net. I felt like a man who had finally taken his life back. The next day, I called my friend Dave, a real estate agent I had known since college. We hadn't talked much over the years, our lives drifting in different directions, but he answered on the first ring. Marcus, long time man, what's up? I need your help, I said, leaning against the cool metal railing of my balcony, the city stretching out below me in a blur of lights and rain-soaked streets. Of course, what's going on? I want to buy a house. Not to live in, not to rent, just to own. There was a pause, the line crackling slightly. Okay, any particular reason? Yeah, I said, my voice steady. I want it close to my parents' place. 2 doors down, if possible. He hesitated clearly, trying to piece together my motivation. All right, he said slowly. I can start looking. What's your budget? Cash, whatever it takes. The next few weeks were a blur of emails, phone calls, and property tours. I wired the down payment without hesitation, signed the closing papers, and transferred the deed to a holding company I had quietly set up years ago for just this kind of situation. 2 weeks later, I owned the house. It was a run-down 2-story place with peeling paint and a sagging porch. The kind of house you'd expect to find in an old ghost story, complete with creaking floors and rusty pipes. But it didn't matter. I wasn't buying it for comfort. I paid a contractor to install a high-end security system, the kind I used to design for my clients. Motion detectors, reinforced locks, surveillance cameras. I even had them change the mailbox and park an old junker in the driveway to make it look abandoned. I didn't move in. I didn't even bother furnishing it. I just wanted it there, sitting quietly in the shadows, a silent reminder that I was no longer the invisible support holding up their lives. Then one evening, as I sat on my balcony sipping a glass of whiskey, my phone buzzed. It was my mom. I let it ring twice, then picked up. Marcus. Her voice was shaky, the kind of tone that told me she had spent the past few hours working up the courage to call. Yes, Mum. Someone bought the house 2 doors down, she said, her voice trembling. It's you, isn't it? I didn't respond, just let the silence stretch out between us, the only sound the distant hum of traffic below. I saw your name on the permit, she continued, her voice cracking. You've been here this whole time, watching us. Still I said nothing. I don't understand, she whispered. Why would you... Finally I spoke, my voice, calm, steady, the way I had practiced in my head a dozen times, because I wanted to see what happens when the drain stops carrying the weight. She started to cry quiet, broken sounds that felt more like the end of something than the beginning of an apology. Marcus, please, and we're losing everything. I closed my eyes, feeling the cool night air on my face, and replied with a finality I hadn't known I was capable of. You already lost me. And I hung up. The fallout came faster than I expected. Adam, who hadn't worked a steady job in over a year, tried to spin the story online. He posted a now-deleted tweet calling me toxic, accusing me of abandoning my family out of spite. But I didn't respond. I didn't need to. People remembered the cousin whose college books I bought the uncle, whose hospital bill I covered the niece I sent a laptop to during lockdown. They reached out quietly, one by one, their messages tinged with a kind of hesitant respect. We didn't know, Marcus, we're sorry. I didn't need an army. I just needed them to finally see. And as foreclosure signs went up and my parents' carefully curated facade began to crumble, I sat on my balcony, sipped my whiskey, and watched it all unfold. Not out of cruelty, out of clarity. Because sometimes the only way to teach people what you're worth is to let them feel your absence. A month passed. The foreclosure sign in front of my parents' house had become a familiar sight, swaying gently in the breeze like a flag marking the end of an era. The yard, once perfectly manicured, was overgrown and tangled, the flower beds choked with weeds. The calls and texts had stopped. The emails had slowed to a trickle. The silence felt like a final heavy breath before the storm broke. Then one evening I got a letter, not from my mum, not from my dad, but from Adam. It arrived in the same tight, cursive handwriting my mum had used, but I recognised Adam's rushed, uneven signature at the bottom. Inside was a cheque, hastily signed, the ink smudged in one corner where his hand had pressed too hard. It wasn't much, barely enough to cover a month's rent in a half-decent Seattle apartment, but the message behind it said everything. You win. I stared at the cheque for a long time, my thumb running along the edge of the paper. It felt strange holding something so small, yet so heavy. They still didn't get it. This had never been about winning. It wasn't about revenge or proving a point or making them beg for my help. It was about finally choosing myself. About breaking free from the unspoken expectations and quiet demands that had chained me to their lives for decades. I slid the cheque into the back of a drawer unopened, like a relic from a past life I no longer recognised. 2 weeks later I sold the house. I didn't even visit it during the sale, just signed the papers, wired the proceeds to a new investment account and walked away. Last I heard, the new owner planned to tear it down and build something new, a fresh start for someone else. That felt right. I had no interest in keeping a front row seat to their unravelling. Around the same time, I started saying yes to things I used to put off. I booked a trip to Iceland, just me, a camera, and no itinerary. I signed up for cooking classes, tired of microwave dinners and take-out containers. I even joined a local hiking group, something I used to roll my eyes at when co-workers suggested it. And then one cold Saturday morning I met Sarah. She was blunt smart and had this habit of calling people out when they tried to undersell themselves. The first time we met, she caught me introducing myself as just an IT guy. "You're not your job," she said, raising an eyebrow over her steaming cup of coffee. "Unless you want to be, but that's a pretty small box to live in." We started slow. Coffee walks, late-night calls, quiet conversations that stretched into early morning silences. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to prove myself to someone. With Sarah, I didn't have to be the reliable one, the fixer, the financial safety net. I just was. Nearly a year after I walked away from my family, I got another call. This time it was a blocked number. I let it ring my heart, thudding in my chest. A voicemail followed. It was my dad. His voice was rough, slower than I remembered, each word laced with a kind of weary regret. Marcus, I don't know if this number still works. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. I miss you. Your mom does too. Adam. Well, he's figuring things out, but I was wrong, son. I was wrong for a long time. And I know saying that now might not matter, but if you ever want to talk, I'll be here. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just sat there holding the phone, listening to a man who had spent a lifetime measuring love in dollars and obligations, finally realizing that the cost of his pride had been silence. I didn't call back. Not then. A few weeks later, while Sarah and I were folding laundry in our apartment, I glanced over at her, the sunlight catching the strands of her messy hair as she hummed to herself. I think I might write him, I said the words slipping out before I could second-guess myself. She looked up, a slow, understanding smile spreading across her face. Because you want closure. I shook my head, my hands stilling over the pile of freshly washed clothes. No, because I'm ready. That night I sat at my desk, the cool Seattle air drifting through the open window, and typed a letter. Dad, I got your voicemail. I've spent a long time trying to understand why things were the way they were. I'm not writing to make you feel guilty. I just want you to know that I needed to leave. I needed space to figure out who I was outside of who you all expected me to be. I'm not the drain. I never was. I'm not coming back to fix things, but I'm willing to talk. On my terms. If you can accept that, here's my number. I hit print, folded the letter into an envelope, and slipped it into the mailbox the next morning on my way to work. I didn't wait by the phone. I didn't hold my breath. I had built something solid, something separate. I didn't need their apology to move forward. But if they offered it, I'd hear it. A month later, I got a text from an unknown number. Thank you, I don't deserve this chance, but I'll take it. A week later, we met for lunch. Just my dad and me. No sweeping declarations, no tearful embraces. Just two people broken in their own ways, sitting across from each other and trying to talk. He asked about work, about my life, about Sarah. He even said her name like it mattered to him, not like a placeholder for some life he thought I should be living. Eventually he looked down at his coffee cup and said, I really messed up. I nodded. Yeah, you did. He didn't flinch, just nodded back. I'm trying to be better, even if it's too late. It's not too late, I said, my voice quiet but firm. It's just not the same road anymore. And that's what healing looked like for me. Not a perfect redemption arc, not a clean Hollywood ending, but a quiet, steady step forward. And for the first time in years, I felt free. Story 2. I remember standing in the hallway of my parents' house, their voices drifting through the half-open door like ghosts. I wasn't eavesdropping, not really. I had just come by to drop off a USB of family photos my mum wanted apparently for a wedding slideshow. It's just Ava, my mom said, her tone almost breezy. She'll understand, she always does. She always does. That line hit harder than it should have. My name's Ava. I'm 31, and apparently I'm still just Ava in this family. The dependable one, the invisible one, the one who doesn't cause problems. The one who gets cut from the annual family vacation so my cousin can have a Pinterest-perfect wedding. I froze in place. 15 years of family trips just cancelled. Because Tessa, the golden child of the family, the walking sunbeam, was getting married. It's fine, Dad added, sounding almost apologetic. We already paid the deposit, but Tessa's venue is costing a fortune. The estate's not cheap. The Ridgeway estate is stunning, though, Mom replied dreamily. She's been dreaming of this since she was a little girl. Of course she has. I stepped back, quietly dropped the flash drive on the entry table, and turned for the door. Sweetheart, my mom peeked her head out from the living room, catching sight of me. I didn't hear you come in. You never do, I mumbled. Then louder, just dropping off those photos for Tessa. She smiled, oblivious. Oh, perfect. She'll be thrilled. The planning's been stressful for her. This venue is gorgeous, but it's stretching everyone thin. Thin enough to cancel the vacation. The words slipped out before I could reel them back. Her face faltered for a second. You heard that? I forced a smile, kind of hard not to. You know how important this is for Tessa, and you're so smart with money, always saving, unlike some people. She gave me that look, the one that's part compliment, part dismissal. Like being financially responsible is my defining trait. My phone buzzed. Lex still on for drinks tonight. Thank God. Gotta run, I said quickly. Meeting Lex. Wait, Ava. My dad had stepped into the hallway. Can we talk about this? Nothing to talk about, I said, grabbing the door handle. I understand. I always do. The drive to the bar was a blur. Angry music, angry thoughts, angry grip on the wheel. Lex was already there when I arrived, 2 martinis waiting. She took one look at me and slid a glass across the table. Spill? I did, the whole ridiculous thing. They cancelled our vacation, I said, voice brittle, to pay for Tessa's wedding. Lex blinked. Wait, the Ridgeway estate, that's where she's getting married. I nodded. Lex leaned back, eyebrows raised. The irony is killing me. I know. You gonna tell them? Tell them what? That their invisible daughter owns the venue. I stared into my drink, swirling the olive like it held all the answers. They don't even know. They think I still work at that boring corporate finance firm. They don't know I left, or that I started a business, or that I co-own Ridgeway with Carter. My phone buzzed again. Carter contract ready for Tessa's wedding. Need your signature. Lex's eyes widened. You're signing the contract for your cousin's wedding. At your venue that she doesn't even know you own. Yep. She grinned. You could just tell them no. Flex a little. Make them beg. I shook my head. Nah, that'd prove them right. Right about what? That I'm bitter. That I'm the weird one. The one who doesn't fit. A slow smile spread across Lex's face. But you are planning something. I tilted my glass in her direction. Maybe. The next morning I met Carter at Ridgeway. Even after all this time, the place still took my breath away. A restored estate turned luxury event venue nestled in the hills outside the city. Crystal chandeliers, gardens manicured within an inch of their life. And the kind of quiet that costs extra. There she is, Carter called from the front steps, our silent partner. Ready to plan the perfect day, I asked with a grin. He held out the contract. You're charging full price, plus premium. I know. You want to tell me why? I told him about the vacation, about the assumption that I'd just understand. Carter nodded. So what's the end game? Before I could answer, a familiar voice echoed through the hall. Tessa, I mouthed. Go, Carter whispered, ushering me toward the side room. I slipped behind a divider just as Tessa and her fiancé Jeremy entered the office. Mr. Cole, she asked sweetly, thank you so much for seeing us. The Ridgeway estate is just perfect. It's a dream. Carter played it cool, happy to help. Let's begin the tour. I stayed hidden, listening as they gushed over everything from the ballroom to the antique rose garden. And the chandeliers, Tessa cooed, they're so elegant. Daddy, aren't they perfect? Pricey, Uncle Ron muttered. But whatever makes you happy, sweetheart. Carter stepped in. This venue is quite exclusive, worth every cent. And the owner Tessa asked, curiosity sharpening her voice. Do they ever make appearances? Carter chuckled. They prefer to remain private. Too bad, she said, sighing. I'd love to meet them. Maybe they'll make an exception for my wedding. Oh, Carter replied, his tone full of subtle amusement. I can guarantee they'll be there. Later that afternoon, Carter found me grinning in his office. You enjoyed that too much, he teased. You kidding, it was cathartic. Just be sure, once you reveal yourself. I've spent my life being invisible, I said. It's time they saw me. He handed me a pen, then sign. I did, and with it the curtain began to rise. I didn't sleep much the night after signing the contract, not because I was nervous, because I wasn't. Not really. I'd been waiting my whole life for this moment, to finally stop being just Ava. But it's wild how you can plan something for so long, build it step by step, and still wake up wondering, am I really going through with this? Yes, I was. A few days later, I stood in Nordstrom's fitting room staring at myself in a red dress. Not burgundy, not wine, red. Lex peeked through the curtain. Well, I stepped out and her jaw actually dropped. Okay, that's a declaration, not a dress. I want them to see me, I said simply. Really see me. No more beige. It's a wedding, Ava. Are you sure about red? I smiled. It's not just a wedding, it's the stage. Later that week, my phone rang for the 5th time in an hour. My mom. I let it go to voicemail again. Lex raised an eyebrow over her iced latte. You gonna keep dodging her forever? I shrugged. I'm not ready. She said it's an emergency, she reminded me. Probably a napkin crisis, I muttered, grabbing the phone. It wasn't about napkins. She's crying, Ava Mom said the second I picked up. The wedding planner quit, said Tessa's being impossible. Lex leaned in, hearing every word. We need you, Mom pleaded. Please, you're so organised and you know how much this means to her. I'll come, I said. Give me 30 minutes. Lex's mouth dropped open. You're going? Yep. Bad idea. Maybe, but sometimes the best plays start in the chaos. When I arrived at Ridgeway, it was like a movie set mid-meltdown. Tessa was crying in the centre of the ballroom. My mum hovered nearby, looking ready to faint. Carter stood quietly off to the side, hiding a smirk behind his professional demeanour. Thank God, Mom said, pulling me into the chaos. You can fix this. Fix what exactly, I asked. She wanted to repaint the garden walls, Carter said smoothly. The planner disagreed. She said my vision was tacky, Tessa wailed. I kept my voice calm. Okay, let's reset. First, this venue has specific guidelines. I'll help. But within those, Tessa sniffled. The owner is so controlling. Who even are they? They know what they're doing, I replied, glancing at Carter. I wasn't just coordinating her wedding. I was steering the ship and she didn't even know it. From that day on, I became the invisible force behind every decision. Tessa would make a ridiculous request, painting the gazebo blush pink, hiring live swans, replacing the antique chandeliers, and I'd find a way to politely shut it down. Carter and I became a silent tag team. One glance, one nod, and we were in sync. We never outright said no. We just made sure the mysterious owner's policies kept things reasonable. Tessa clueless. One afternoon she stormed into Carter's office, dragging a stack of fabric samples. Why aren't these table runners the same colour as the bridesmaid dresses, she demanded. They are, I said, holding them side by side, same shade. This is blush cream, she snapped. That's dawn glow. Totally different. I bit my tongue. That's why you're single, she added. No sense of romance. That one stung more than I expected, but I stayed calm, quiet, because I wasn't done yet. A week later, I got a text from Carter. Tessa wants to meet the owner, says she'll go public if they don't appear. I read it twice and laughed. Time for the reveal, Lex asked when I showed her the message. Not yet, I said. Almost. Damn, you're good. I smiled. She's going to get exactly what she asked for, just not how she expects. Then came the rehearsal dinner. Lex helped me into the red dress, still sure. Never been more sure of anything in my life. You know, this is going to wreck the family for a while, right? I nodded, but maybe it'll also fix it. Back at Ridgeway, Carter stepped up to the mic after the meal. The room quieted instantly. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, it's my pleasure to introduce someone very special tonight. Someone who's been with us all along, the owner of the Ridgeway estate. Every eye turned to the doorway. I stepped through. The silence felt like oxygen after years of being underwater. Tessa blinked like she didn't understand. What? I bought this place 2 years ago, I said. Carter and I built it together. All the policies that annoyed you mine. You let us pay full price, Uncle Ron barked red-faced. Just like every other client. But your family, Mom added, looking stunned. And family's why you cancelled our trip, I said calmly, to fund this wedding, at my venue. Tessa's mouth opened, but no sound came out. This was never about revenge, I said. It was about respect. I gave you the perfect day, but now you know who made it happen. Jeremy the groom stood awkwardly beside her. I need some air. Tessa didn't stop him. No one did. The fallout was instant. Uncle Ron threatened to sue. Carter shut that down with contract clauses. Mom cried. Dad just sat back and watched the chaos like he'd seen it coming all along. I left early, Lex and Carter beside me. You okay? Lex asked quietly. I nodded. They wanted to know the owner. Now they do. Morning sunlight poured through the Ridgeway windows the next day, golden and quiet. It was Tessa's wedding day. I sat in my office upstairs barefoot, holding a mug of tea. My red dress hung on the back of the door like a flag, the same red as Ridgeway's carpets. As deliberate as every move I'd made. On the monitor in front of me, I watched the venue come to life. Florists setting centerpieces, caterers lining up champagne flutes, bridesmaids fluttering around in matching blush cream, or maybe dawn glow, I still couldn't tell. I saw my family too, split into quiet groups, talking, whispering. looking around like they were waiting for someone to take control. They were waiting for me. A knock tapped softly on my door. I didn't look up. "Come in." It was Mom. She stepped in carefully as if entering sacred space. "You're not wearing beige," she said. "Nope." She studied the red dress for a moment. "Tessa cried this morning, said her wedding's cursed now. Did she?" Mom sat down across from me. She looked tired, smaller somehow. "I brought something," she said, digging into her purse. It was a photo, old, faded at the corners. Me around 16, standing off to the side at Tessa's Sweet 16 party. Everyone else in the shot was smiling at her. I was just there, holding a gift bag, half cut off by the frame. "I took this," Mom said quietly. Back then, I thought it was a cute candid, but last night I looked at it again, and I saw it for what it was. "What's that?" "A pattern, one I helped create." I looked down at the photo. All I could think was how young I looked, how tired. "I'm sorry," she said. "We never saw it. You always kept everything together so well we didn't stop to ask if you wanted to." I didn't speak, not right away. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she added, "but I am asking. Will you come to the ceremony? Just be there." I stood slowly, fingers brushing the fabric of the dress. "I'll come," I said. The bridal suite was quiet when I walked in. Tessa stood at the window veil, hanging loosely in her hand. "You're wearing that, huh?" I nodded. She turned. Her eyes were swollen, but there was something else too, something I hadn't seen in her since we were kids. Honesty. "I thought you were boring," she said. "Predictable. Quiet. Turns out you were playing chess while I was playing dress-up." I stayed silent. Let her speak. "I've been awful to you," she admitted. "Not just this year. For years." "That's true?" She winced a little but nodded. "You really own this place?" "I do." "All those times I complained about the owner, you were talking to her." She actually laughed, a small, sad laugh. "I deserved this, every ounce." I shook my head. "It wasn't about punishing you. It was about showing you I'm not someone you just step around. I built this. I made it what it is. And you got to have your perfect day here because of me." She looked down. "Thank you." I took a breath. "You should finish getting ready." She glanced at her reflection. "You think it'll still be beautiful?" "It already is." The ceremony went on as planned. Sunlight filled the rose garden. Jeremy was waiting by the altar, looking stiff in his tux, but smiling. Tessa walked down the aisle, white veil glowing in the afternoon light. I watched from the third row, not from the edge, not from behind a pillar, but right in the centre, right where I belonged. The reception buzzed with nervous energy. People still didn't know how to talk to me. I got a lot of sideways glances, awkward smiles. A few mumbled, "You look nice," and I didn't know. Carter raised an eyebrow as he passed me with a tray of champagne. "So, was it worth it?" I didn't answer right away. I scanned the room, Mum talking quietly with Aunt Laura, Dad chuckling with Carter by the bar. Tessa and Jeremy slow dancing under the chandelier she'd fallen in love with months ago. I think I said it wasn't about revenge after all. "Oh," Carter asked. "Then what?" "Truth and choice. I didn't want them to hurt. I wanted them to see who I am, what I've built, what I've been holding in all these years." He nodded and for once said nothing. Later that evening, Dad found me standing alone near the staircase. "You ready to dance?" he asked, holding out his hand. I stared at him. "You sure you want to be seen with the big bad venue owner?" He smiled soft. "You know, when you were little, you used to dance on my shoes, always trying to lead." I remember. Guess I should have known then. We walked onto the dance floor. The music swelled. We danced slow and steady. Around us, the family watched. No whispers, no judgment, just watching. Seeing. Afterward, I stood at the edge of the patio, watching the lanterns flicker above the tables. Lex joined me, sipping her third glass of Prosecco. "You did it," she said. "I didn't win." "Maybe not, but they'll never call you just Ava again." I nodded, half smiling. That's not what I was after anyway. "What were you after?" "Balance," I said, "and maybe a little peace." That night I went home alone. I poured myself a glass of wine, took off the red dress, hung it up carefully, and then I stood in front of the mirror, not as someone seeking revenge or validation, but just as myself. I didn't need a spotlight anymore. I'd built the stage, and that was enough. Story 3, I didn't cry at the will reading. I didn't speak. I just sat in that over-decorated office, letting the scent of old leather and expensive wood polish remind me of every uncomfortable moment I'd spent in my father's presence. When the lawyer cleared his throat and said, "Everything goes to your sister," I didn't blink. I just watched Sophia grin. That smug, surgically sculpted grin she'd been perfecting since she was 15. Ms. Sophia Bennett will inherit the properties at 313 Westmore Road, 9847 Ridgeland Cove, and the Lakeside Estate in Oregon, as well as full ownership and controlling interest in Bennett Holdings. Mr. Dalton read his voice cool, almost bored. I stared out the window at the city skyline, trying not to count the ways this was expected. Sophia had always been his daughter. The one who dressed right, married right, birthed grandkids on cue. I was the marine ecologist who never made the Christmas cards. "Is that all?" Sophia asked, her voice syrupy sweet. "I mean, I know my father loved Isla, of course, but business is business." She turned and gave me this performative pout that made me want to hurl a paperweight through the window. "I'm sure Dad wanted you to have something meaningful, Isla," she said, like I was some pity case instead of someone who walked away from the family name years ago. Mr. Dalton coughed politely. "There is a separate account. Family heirlooms mostly. Some photos. A few of your grandmother's things." Sophia giggled. "A box of trinkets. How charming." I stood, smoothed my jacket. "Are we done?" He nodded, probably relieved I wasn't flipping the conference table. As I walked out, Sophia called after me, "You know, if you're looking for work, maybe I can find something for you at Bennett Holdings. Something simple, admin level." I smiled without turning around. "That's generous, but I'll be fine. My place isn't much. A one-bedroom craftsman tucked behind a co-op market, the kind of place that smells like cedar and sea air. I bought it outright, with money I earned, not inherited. I've never needed their approval, and I sure as hell don't need it now. But as soon as I shut the front door, I went straight for my office, pulled out a folder, hidden behind a stack of research grant proposals. Mum gave it to me 2 years ago during her last lucid stretch. "Don't open this until after your father passes," she said, her hands trembling. "Promise me." Inside, a letter in her elegant script, and enough legal and financial documentation to make my head spin. "My darling Isla, if you're reading this, your father is gone. And I imagine he left everything to your sister just as I feared. What he never understood, what he never wanted to understand, is that while he was building empires and controlling legacies, I was building something else entirely. Turns out Mum had been investing, quietly, strategically. Over 20 years, she built an eco-investment portfolio worth well over what Dad's entire company was currently valued at. You inspired it, Isla. Your work with ocean preservation, your refusal to shrink yourself. I believed in your vision, even when he mocked it. Everything I've built is legally in your name. Sophia can't touch a cent." My breath caught. Offshore accounts, green energy partnerships, even stakes in global ocean cleanup initiatives. I sat there for hours, the pages spread across my dining table like pieces of a puzzle I didn't know I was solving. Sophia texted me around 8 p.m. "Dinner tomorrow. Let's talk about your future. I want to help Isla." I stared at the message, then replied, "Sure, come by in the morning. I've got something to show you." She showed up in heels and judgment. "Cute place," she sniffed, stepping over my thrifted rug like it might stain her shoes. "We really do need to talk about upgrading your situation. Dad wouldn't want you living like this." I waved her into the dining room. "There's something you should see." The colour drained from her face as she skimmed the documents. One page, then another. Her perfectly polished nails trembled. "This is fake," she said. "It's not. Mum wasn't even business-minded. She was quiet, not stupid." The silence stretched. She sat down, eyes fixed on the numbers. "This is worth more than everything I got." I nodded, by a lot. And then came the pivot, Sophia's signature move. "We could do something with this. Merge portfolios, combine legacies, work together." "No," I said steady. "This isn't your legacy. You got what Dad wanted for you. This is Mum's vision, mine to carry." She stood fast. Her mask slipped just a little. "You're making a mistake." I smiled. "Probably, but it's my mistake to make." She left heels cracking against the pavement like gunshots. I poured tea, watched the wind rustle the coastal pines outside my window. For the first time in years, I felt light. This wasn't about revenge. This was about alignment. And tomorrow I'd start building something real. The morning after Sophia's meltdown, I woke up to 22 missed calls and 9 voice messages, mostly from people who hadn't spoken to me in years. Isla, this is Uncle Peter. I heard there was some confusion at the will reading. Call me back. Cousin Mallory here. So crazy what happened, Lowell. We should catch up sometime. Even my father's longtime business partner texted, let's talk. There might be ways to integrate your holdings into Bennett Holdings. You owe it to the family legacy. That word again, legacy. The way they said it like it was a brand name they could slap on a brochure. I shut off my phone. I didn't owe anyone anything. By noon, I was sitting in the office of Rachel Cho, my mother's old attorney. Where my dad's lawyer gave off retired country club energy, Rachel was all sharp lines and sharper intellect. Sleek bob, minimal makeup, grey linen suit that whispered, I win even when I lose. You're right on time, she said, smiling as I walked in. Your mother thought you might be? She slid a thick folder across the desk. She expected pushback, especially from your sister, so she left us a trail of receipts, dated contracts, time-stamped investment decisions, even recordings from meetings. I raised an eyebrow. She recorded meetings. Only the important ones. She knew how to play the long game. I flipped through the documents. Everything was so detailed, so intentional. My mother had spent decades playing the supportive wife, all while quietly building an empire that made Bennett Holdings look like a high school group project. And there's more, Rachel added. She anticipated that Bennett Holdings might try to block environmental initiatives tied to your assets, so she added legal contingencies, fail-safes. Of course she did, I said, smiling. I left Rachel's office with a flash drive, a list of pre-approved contacts, and the calm clarity of someone finally walking the path they were meant to be on. That afternoon, I drove across town to meet Dr. Kenji Park, an ocean scientist whose research I'd followed for years. His work focused on microplastic filtration systems, a potential game changer for marine ecosystems. His lab was chaotic in the best way. Wires, whiteboards, data sheets everywhere. It smelled like solder and sea salt. When I told him who I was, he blinked twice, then said, Wait, your mother was our anonymous benefactor. She was, I nodded, and now I'm taking over. We shook hands, and just like that, the future felt possible again. That night, Sophia emailed me a proposal. Subject Strategic Partnership Discussion Isla. Let's be smart about this. We can rebrand Bennett Holdings to reflect sustainability. Our infrastructure, your assets. We're stronger together. Stronger together. That phrase had haunted me since childhood. Every time Dad pit us against each other, every time Sophia got the praise and I got the lecture he'd end it with. You two are stronger together. I didn't reply. The next day I saw her car outside my place again. She didn't knock, just waited on the steps like some corporate Cinderella who lost her throne instead of a shoe. When I opened the door, she was pacing. We need to talk. I let her in without a word. She didn't comment on my furniture this time, just sat at the edge of my couch like it might bite her. I spoke with the board this morning, she said, voice tight. They're panicking. Once news of Mum's portfolio leaked, investor confidence dropped. They think Bennett Holdings is behind the curve, irrelevant. Some are threatening to pull out. I raised an eyebrow. So, the same people who ignored Mum's warnings are shocked she was right. She didn't appreciate that. This isn't a game, Isla. This affects real people, our employees, our family reputation. You're worried about the brand, I said. I'm worried about the ocean choking on plastic. Sophia stood. God, can you stop being so self-righteous for 5 seconds? I'm not being self-righteous, I replied calmly. I'm just done pretending we want the same things. She followed me to the kitchen. What do you want then? Money, a position, public validation. I turned, leaned on the counter, met her gaze. I want to build something that matters. I want to use Mom's legacy for what she believed in, not to bail out a sinking ship. Sophia laughed, but it sounded hollow. You've changed. No, I said, you just never looked close enough to see me. That night I sent an email to the Bennett Holdings board. It wasn't dramatic, just a polite notice that I had no intention of merging assets or collaborating on joint ventures. I attached projections, environmental forecasts, and a note. My mother built her portfolio on the belief that integrity should come before profit. I intend to honour that. Simple, clear, non-negotiable. The fallout came fast. 2 board members resigned. One called me trying to sweet-talk me into reconsidering for the good of the company. Meanwhile, Dr. Park's team finalised plans for a major grant initiative we'd fund through Mom's solar development stake. I was in the middle of reviewing proposals when Sophia showed up again this time, looking less like a CEO and more like someone whose world had shifted underneath her. She didn't sit, just stood in the doorway. "I'm being pushed out," she said. "They're voting to remove me as CEO." I tilted my head. That must be hard. She laughed once, bitterly. "They're blaming me for not seeing Mum's investments coming, for ignoring sustainability trends, for failing to modernise." "Funny," I said. "That's what Mum warned Dad about. He didn't listen either." She stared at me. "You think this is karma?" "No," I said, softer than I expected. "I think this is correction." Later that night, Rachel texted me. The board vote passed. Sophia's out, interim CEO appointed. I stared at the message, felt nothing really, not triumph, not vindication, just peace. Not because I won, but because I didn't have to fight anymore. A week passed after the board vote. I didn't hear from Sophia, and I didn't go looking. There wasn't any victory dance, no champagne pop. Just me sitting at my desk sorting through project proposals while the tide rolled in and out outside my window. One morning I got a letter, real paper, real ink, from Sophia. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and that's fair, but I've been thinking, maybe I spent too long living the version of myself Dad wanted. Maybe I forgot to ask what I actually believed in." That was all it said. No pitch, no manipulation, just a slow truth cracking open. I set it down and let it sit. The next few months moved fast. Dr. Park's team secured a global partnership. We launched our first test system in coastal waters outside Vancouver. It worked better than expected. Plastic capture rates were high, bycatch low. Investors came not for greed, but for real change. I didn't take interviews, didn't attend panels. I just worked. My name started showing up in environmental publications, and Rachel fielded calls from government liaisons wanting to collaborate. Most of the time I let her handle it. I had algae farms and coral nurseries to scale, and still no contact from Sophia. Until one day she just showed up again. This time she didn't knock like a queen visiting a peasant. She waited on the porch with her shoes off, hair pulled back, wearing jeans and a hoodie. I opened the door, and she looked up with no makeup, no pretense. "Can we walk?" she asked. We went down to the beach. She didn't speak for the first 10 minutes, just listened to the waves like she was waiting for them to tell her what to say. "I've been volunteering," she finally said, "at an education centre for kids, ocean literacy programs." I looked over at her. She wasn't lying. "It's small," she added, "but it feels good, like something real." I nodded. Mom would have loved that. She smiled, but it faltered. "I hated how she looked at you, like you were the best part of her." "You hated me?" I asked, not angry, just curious. "No," she said. "I hated what you reminded me of, that I'd traded depth for approval." We sat on a driftwood log, the sky that flat grey blue that always comes before spring. "I wasn't kind to you," she admitted. "No," I said, "you weren't." She picked up a pebble, tossed it into the tide. "But I'm trying to be someone better now. And if it means anything, I'm sorry, Isla, for all of it." I didn't answer right away. Forgiveness isn't a switch. It's a tide. It comes in, slowly pulls back, then returns when it's ready. So I just said thank you for saying that. Later that week, Rachel handed me another envelope from Mum's estate. "This one was time-released," she explained. She wanted it sent exactly a year after the first letter. Inside was a short note and a document labelled Ocean Seed Fund, Educational Division Grant Programme. "If Sophia shows any sign of change, any genuine shift in heart, I want her to have this. The children need both our daughters. Let her help them learn." That was it. No guilt, no manipulation, just belief. belief that people can change if given space and a little light. I emailed the packet to Sophia with a note. If you're serious about that work, here's your chance. The fund is real, and it's yours to run if you want it. She replied 4 hours later, "Thank you, I won't waste it." A year passed. We weren't best friends. We didn't do brunch or finish each other's sentences. But we worked side by side. She built out the education wing of the foundation, created virtual reef classrooms, and started a scholarship fund for girls in science. Every once in a while, she'd send me an update with a picture attached kids laughing in tide pools, building models of wave turbines. She didn't ask for credit. She just worked. On what would have been Mum's 71st birthday, we met in her old garden. I still kept it up, pruned the roses, rotated the compost, turned over the soil like she taught me when I was little. Sophia kneeled by the lavender bush and said quietly, "She tried to show me this stuff when I was a kid. I never had the patience. She knew I said. She always believed you'd come around. She just didn't push." Sophia looked up at me, her voice steady but soft. "I was so scared of not being enough for him that I forgot how to be enough for me. We didn't need more words. Some things are best left planted in silence." That night I sat on my porch with a cup of tea and the ocean just visible between the trees. On my wall inside were 2 photos. One Mom in her wide sun hat teaching me how to test pH in soil. 2 Sophia crouched in front of a whiteboard explaining ocean salinity to a group of wide-eyed 10-year-olds. Neither woman was who the world expected her to be. But both had made their way to truth. The next morning, Sophia sent me a text. "Thinking of adding a hands-on marine field trip series to the program. You in?" I smiled. Typed back always. Because sometimes revenge isn't loud. It isn't brutal. Sometimes it's simply reclaiming what was stolen. Voice. Direction. Peace. And sometimes, if you're lucky, even the ones who hurt you find a way back. Not because they deserved it, but because someone left the door open just a crack.